Indie Game of the Year 2022. Is it as good as I remember it? Short answer, yes. But in my opinion, Stray is so much more than what you see on a surface level, and it's difficult to put into words what I mean by that. At first I planned to do a by the books review, but eventually I abandoned that idea. I guess it is difficult to be completely objective about something if it takes you almost half a year to share your opinion on a matter. Additionally, if I would only adhere to the rules of a review, I would only have good things to say and it wouldn't bring anything new to the table really. No sir, this video will be more analytical and violently pretentious in nature, and if you're not up for that, maybe you should just go watch IGN or something. With that being said, we can get into the real meat of this essay. What's up? Welcome to yet another video where a grown man is trying his damnedest to bring sophistication to the video game medium. Keep in mind that I had no insight whatsoever into the production of this game, so everything I'm saying from this point on will be either incredibly coincidental or completely asinine. So what makes Stray special? Well, it depends on who you ask of course, but in terms of marketing it was pretty straightforward. This game is about a cat, you play as a cat, and you do cat things. This is obviously a gross generalization, but the story of Stray isn't that complicated really. In a not so distant future, a young orange cat is separated from its family and discovers a huge underground city. On its journey back to the surface, the cat comes across a plethora of characters like the friendly companions, the omnivoric parasites known as Zurks, and B12, Navi's less irritating relative from the future. Simple enough, yes, but it doesn't show the whole picture, and at launch many of Stray's other qualities were sorely overlooked in favor of what you see at face value. And I hereby confidently assert that there is so much more to it than that, especially in the department of narrative and themes, and not only the lol cat game go meow memes. For starters, Stray excels in how it presents scale and visuals. The underground city of the companions is a huge, mysterious and sometimes even bone-chilling place. There are plenty of points where the camera zooms out and lets you get a real sense of scale and awareness of the world. The environments tower over you, and the dark and bleak and sometimes even horror-inspired atmosphere is a stark contrast to the fluffy feline. Yep, you heard me. A significant part of the game really likes to dig deep into unsolicited omedophobia, and this is where I'll bring up one of my few critiques I have of this game. When you enter the domain of the Zurks, there's a quite jarring but short-lived shift in tone and genre. From a tonal point of view, it's a bit confusing, and a question can be made why it was included at all. Also, once it's over, it is barely talked about or mentioned again. It is easily one of the most memorable parts of the game, but it is also one that makes you go, oh yeah, that was a thing. Don't get me wrong, I really like the design of this level and the atmosphere is masterfully devised, but the overall tonality of the game comes across as a bit fragmented because of it. And unless there comes a point in this essay where I for the sake of structural catharsis understands the reasoning behind it, I will be really harsh in my criticism and describe the game as somewhat occasionally tone deaf. So let me just talk about the music real quick. I don't have the right education to comment on the technicalities behind it, but my god, the soundtrack is just so good. Composed by this guy. The instrumentation ranges from curious and exciting to exotic and mysterious, and it manages to incorporate a great span of moods and atmospheres. There is a very rich blend of influences that together create something entirely unique. In an interview made by Overlode, the composer had this to say about making the music for Stray. I thought it made sense to have a subtle cultural flavor as a reminder of human traditions, but I didn't want to sound cliché or give an obvious hint at any precise geographical location. With a few exceptions, such as the gamelan-inspired patterns, I mostly refrained from it. Apart from the obvious Asian musical influences, his goal was to strike a sort of balance, to take contrasting influences and make them work together and find a sort of middle ground. Not only is the soundtrack a sort of well-balanced bastardization of different influences, but it also manages to make sense of this strange world where a cute cat and the unholy offspring of Ridley Scott is invited to the same party. With this in mind, maybe the weird tonal shifts isn't so strange after all, because at its core the cat experience is always kept intact while a dark and ever-changing world is built around it. It is something as conspicuous as a cyberpunk symphony conducted by an orange cat. Looking at it from a macro perspective, there's a metaphorical language built upon visual, auditory and thematic opposites at play here. To put it in layman terms, the style of Stray, its pulse, is built upon opposites. It kinda comes across as a Don Bluth crafted experience. Our main character is a small, cute and fluffy animal trying to survive in a very intimidating world. At its core, however, there's a wide-eyed innocence that is never completely consumed by the world surrounding it. Looping back to the domain of the Zurks, at first sight it might not fit the game at all, but if you interpret presented as a stylistic juxtaposition to our furry avatar, its inclusion actually makes sense. So to summarize, the intimidating and dark aspect of Stray works in tandem with the innocent and wholesome, and the result is an excellently realized style and identity, from the very first frame to the very last one. Let's talk about the ending. So what is Stray really about? What story is it trying to convey? Well, simple, it's about a cat trying to escape a strange underground city to rejoin with its family. Yes. But no. As I'm sure I've made painfully obvious by now, Stray is so much more than its fluffy exterior. There's a distinct style and tone that in my opinion kinda went overlooked at the initial release in favor of random cat internet shenanigans, and it can all be boiled down to its ending sequence. After a long, arduous journey, we find ourselves in a control room. Here we'll be able to open up the city, free the companions, and by extension, let the cat engage in all sorts of outdoor zoomies. But in order to open the gates, B12, the closest thing you have to a friend during your journey, has to be sacrificed. Not only do you have to sacrifice him in order to get out, but you also have to sacrifice the last remnant of humanity, since B12's conscience is everything that is left of mankind. It is pretty hard-hitting stuff, and the fact that you, so to speak, has to pull the trigger multiple times is a very effective way to use gameplay as a sort of emotional conductor. It is a beautiful but bittersweet plot twist that evolves this sequence into a deeply emotional, deeply tragic sacrifice for the greater good. I could talk for hours about B12's fate, but I won't. While it might be the emotional gut punch of the game, it isn't what drives home the whole experience, at least not for the sake of this analysis. And the reason is this shot. This one right here. This shot encompasses everything I've talked about so far. In this shot, we can see that Stray was never really about saving the companions, sacrificing B12, or destroying the Zergs. It was about something completely different. Looking at it in retrospect, each and every story beat in Stray occurs just because the fluffylicious protagonist wanted to see its family again. Nothing was ever made more important than that, and it was always the end goal. I don't want to undermine the significance of other big plot threads, but at the end of the day, they all kinda play second fiddle here. They are, by all means, big and important incidents in the overarching story of the game, but what set them in motion to begin with? This shot is that idea distilled down to its essence. You have the small, vulnerable cat in the foreground and the gigantic, retracting roof in the background. It is a contrasting shot of how the big things shapes the world, but it is the small things that sets them in motion. Two contrasting, opposing concepts that works together to create something completely unique. Let it be visual, auditory, or thematic. The idea of opposites and contrast is the real essence of Stray. I'm not gonna act like I knew what was going on during the development of Stray. After all, I'm just another guy on YouTube making pretentious video essays about something he loves and can't get enough of. This video might be an eye-opener to some of you, or I might just be completely talking out of my ass. Either way, what I want to bring with me after my revisit of Stray is that it is important to remember the little things in life. While the big things might be what shapes us, the little things is what gives us real joy. Like taking a nap in the middle of the day. Or petting a cat.